Going to Chiron for me was probably a bit challenging in some ways. As I've said earlier, I went to fairly regimented schools, and with a military father, a fairly regimented upbringing. Coming into year 12 with a group of students who had already had their year 11 at Chiron and something like that, and the openness and the freedom to discuss and the latitude to sort of attend classes or not was rather challenging, and they all seemed so much cooler than I did at the time. And obviously there were some very talented sort of artistic students there, which can be a bit challenging, but at the same time it's very stimulating, and it was wonderful to sort of be exposed to the additional freedom and the responsibility of taking responsibility for your own actions and so on there, which I think outfitted me to attend university and study, and gave me a different perspective on how to approach things through my life since. And I think it's been definitely beneficial. Well, certainly at that stage, getting a good aggregate to get into university. I mean, if you wanted to go to university, it was all about the HSC and the aggregate, and the choices within the HSC were relatively limited and were not aimed at developing creative thought. Certainly, if you were fortunate, you went to a school that encouraged critical thinking, but not necessarily the creative side. There is still very much an emphasis on HSC and the ATAR, and certainly for parents and so on, it's seen as the way of judging a school as performance in ATAR. Universities are trying hard these days to change that. They're getting more liberal. An aspect of that is the push to try and increase participation by people from low SES backgrounds, and the development of pathways to university, where people who haven't necessarily performed at year 12 or haven't even gone as far as year 12, there are avenues through TAFE and other studies for still young people to go into university. A lot of universities have early entrance programs and so on, where they will look at schools' recommendations, and as long as somebody achieves a moderate sort of ATAR later, they will get a place based on a recommendation from the school's principal or something like that. So the universities are working on looking beyond the straight ATAR, and certainly for a lot of other courses, especially in the creative and performing arts, universities for a long time have looked beyond the ATAR. There are interviews, auditions, portfolios, that sort of thing, because they're appropriate to the course. And even as far as bonuses go, universities are offering people places well below the cut-offs if they've performed well in the relevant subjects. So there is still a big focus on HSC and ATAR, but very slowly that's being, it's not diluted, but it's being supplemented with other things, I think. One of the difficulties in the recent years with the Australian Qualifications Framework, the AQF, which is determining that you have a bachelor's degree, you have a master's, and then below that you have the associate degrees, the diplomas, the certificate 1, 2, 3, 4, and determining how qualifications work so that outright qualifications can be recognised and in a standardised framework around the world. One of the problems is that New South Wales HSC sort of fits between a certificate 2 and a certificate 4, depending on what subjects and levels the student attempts. And certainly it provides a qualification that students who aren't academically inclined can get an HSC and get a qualification, and students who really are academically inclined can do really challenging subjects and still come out with an HSC, but it's probably a much higher grade qualification, regardless of the ATAR that comes out at the end. One of the problems quite a number of years ago now was the front page of the Telegraph that put a picture of the year 12 from Mount Druitt High School on, and it effectively labelled that year as the year we failed and branded the students as failures. It's not because the students weren't any good. The students at Mount Druitt High School, who were students who didn't have tertiary education in mind, they weren't doing subject selections that would enable them to go to university. I mean, the ATAR had, or the TER as it was at the time, you have a certain number of Category A units. They weren't doing that number of units. There could have been students in there who were achieving 100 in every subject they did, but they would never get an ATAR, or if they did, it was going to be a low one, because just the way they were structured. So they were being branded as failures, even though they may have been brilliant students. And that's the sort of issue we have. Students in that area who wanted to go to university went to a different school. But these were students who were doing a qualification that suited their ambitions and their aims. Probably they were vocational aims, but they were appropriate and they were getting a high school certificate out of that. I think some of the discussion out of the forum yesterday is quite germane. It's very difficult to make change. Somehow managing to produce teachers who are interested in engaging with students, creating schools that don't squash that. I think one of the problems again is you do get good teachers, but they're thrown into environments that don't allow them to work that way. One of the things Andrew Cappy-Wood said, he would like to try and get hold of a couple of failing high schools and try and turn them into something that has a totally different attitude, which I think would be great, but you've got to work on so many levels. You've got to work to get the parents' attitude to change in that case. To change a school, to start a new attitude to teaching and something like that, you've got to work on the community around it, as well as the teachers and the systems within the school and so on. So it's a big task, and I think it's something that you've really got to work on social change in attitudes and so on around the place, really, to get people to start expecting different things from education. I think if you have schools like Chiron that can demonstrate success in their candidates and something like that, that aren't necessarily doing traditional programs, and if those can be held up as examples to people that there are certainly good outcomes for the development of these students and careers and university entrance or whatever is appropriate for those students. And you again have to change the perception too. For a lot of people, university is the only avenue in parents' minds. But examples of students being successfully produced by schools like Chiron and other schools around, I think, are the things that slowly help our communities change their attitudes.